Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today. We are breaking down a fascinating and honestly a deeply practical guide straight from the therapy room. We're looking at exactly why expressing our feelings is so incredibly hard, and way more importantly, how we can actually start doing it right. Look, we've all been there, right? You know exactly what you're feeling inside. Underneath that tight chest, or maybe the heat rising in your neck, there is a real, totally valid emotion trying to get out. But the second you open your mouth, it just comes out all wrong. Maybe it explodes as an angry accusation, or maybe you just completely shut down into silence during a conflict. You're looking at your partner, you're desperate to be understood, and it just completely misses the mark. It is incredibly frustrating. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today's explainer. First, why expression is hard. Second, venting versus dumping versus expressing. Third, the I feel myth. Fourth, the flashlight technique. Fifth, a 5-level practice guide. And finally, the cost of connection. All right, section 1, why expression is hard, and specifically why it's biology, not a character flaw. I want to emphasize this right out of the gate because it's absolutely crucial. If you struggle to communicate your feelings, it is not a personal failure. It's literally a biological reflex. You see, we are wired for connection just like we're wired for oxygen. So when you try to express something vulnerable, your brain's amygdala instantly runs this rapid, unconscious threat calculation. It's asking, wait, if I say this out loud, are they going to leave me? And when that perceived threat is big enough, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that handles logic, language, and perfectly articulating your thoughts, it just goes offline. Actually, blood flow physically shifts away from it. You literally lose the cognitive tools you need to formulate your feelings. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's going on in those moments. You aren't just bad at feelings, you're trying to pull off a highly complex cognitive task, like choosing the perfect words and meticulously regulating your tone while your physical body is in pure survival mode. It's impossible. You can't write a masterpiece when the ground is literally shaking beneath your feet. Now, beyond the immediate brain chemistry, there are 3 invisible forces that intercept your true feelings before they ever reach your lips. First up is shame. Think of shame as a biological stop sign that forces you to either attack, withdraw, or avoid. Second, we have socialization. These are those deeply ingrained invisible rule books we all pick up in childhood about which emotions are quote unquote acceptable to show. And third is the fear of vulnerability, which is when your body reacts to emotional exposure as if a tiger just walked into the room, a literal physical danger. Recognizing these forces is a huge first step for us, moving right along to section 2, venting versus dumping versus expressing. So we really need to clarify what we think is expressing our feelings versus what actually is. Venting, for example, feels amazing in the moment, right? But venting is what we call the story of other. It's taking a psychological flashlight and shining it outward to narrate all your partner's flaws. You always do this. You never listen to me. Venting targets the wrong thing. True expression, though, that's the story of self. It's taking that same flashlight, turning it completely inward, and reporting your actual present moment physical reality. It's totally terrifying, but it's the only thing that actually builds connection. Well, and then there's emotional dumping. Think of this like opening a literal fire hydrant right in someone's face and calling it being honest. I mean, we've all been on the receiving end of that flood, right? It blasts the other person with the absolute full intensity of your internal experience with zero regulation. It entirely prioritizes your need to just discharge that emotion over the other person's actual capacity to hear and receive you. All right. Section 3, the I feel myth. Okay. Get ready for a total paradigm shift because we're about to debunk some classic pop psychology advice. You've probably been told to use I feel statements, right? Like I feel X when you do Y? Well, the crucial point is that those statements usually just trigger your partner's defenses anyway. They're highly cognitive and they keep the focus entirely on the other person's behavior. Instead, we want to look at the experience of self. This is somatic. It's anchored right in the present moment, and it gives your partner actual physical data instead of inviting a debate. So, why does that traditional I feel formula crash and burn? Usually for three reasons. First, it's just an accusation wearing a clever little costume. If you say, I feel disrespected when you come home late, guess what? Your partner just hears the criticism. Second, it's a cognitive solution to a biological problem, like we talked about. Asking your brain for perfectly constructed grammar during an emotional earthquake just doesn't work. And third, it forces a debate over who is right about the narrative rather than actually fostering any real connection. Let's shift gears and look at the solution in section 4, the flashlight technique. This is the primary tool from attachment science to fix those old habits. It's incredibly simple, but profoundly effective. Turn that psychological flashlight 180 degrees inward. In fact, try it with me right now as you're watching this. Just take a second and ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body right now? Is it a tight chest, a clenched jaw, maybe a weird sinking feeling in your stomach? When you shift from a heated, angry narrative to just sharing raw physical data, you instantly drop the other person's defenses. Why? Because there's literally nothing for them to argue with. Now, what's really interesting about this is seeing it in action. Compare the story of other, which sounds like you never prioritize me, like with the experience of self, which sounds like right now I feel small and there's a sinking feeling in my stomach. See the difference? Notice how incredibly precise and body-based that second phrase is. That kind of language actually invites genuine concern and care from your partner instead of sparking an immediate defensive shouting match. So, how do we get good at this? That's section 5, a 5-level practice guide. The great news is this is an entirely learnable skill. Let's move through the exact graduated training approach therapists use and see how this builds. Level 1 is just solo practice, like literally setting an alarm on your phone to just notice what your body is doing. Level 2 is adding a tentative emotional label to that sensation. Level 3 is sharing that one little sentence with a safe friend, not your partner yet, just a friend. Level 4 brings it into the high stakes relationship conversations. And level 5, that's the ultimate goal. Let's quickly zoom in on level 4's golden rule, the 75% rule. When you are in a really tough, heated conversation with your partner, you have to keep 75% of your awareness on your own physical body. Track your breathing, notice the tension in your chest or your gut. If you completely lose contact with your physical body, I guarantee you will get sucked right back into arguing over the narrative. Your body is your barometer here. And that brings us to level 5, recognition and return. Look, I want to reassure you right now, perfection is completely impossible. You are going to get emotionally hijacked. You are going to say the wrong thing. That's just being human. True emotional maturity isn't about never getting triggered. It's simply having the willingness to say, wow, I got totally pulled into my head there. I lost myself. Let me start over. It's having the courage to come back to your body and try again. Finally, section 6, the cost of connection. We really need to acknowledge the invisible toll this work takes, especially if you're someone who naturally shuts down during conflict. Expressing real feelings requires literal caloric energy. Your nervous system is working absolute overtime to keep you present in that room instead of just fleeing. So if you feel completely wiped out and exhausted after a really vulnerable conversation, listen to me. That isn't a sign of weakness. That is biological proof of incredibly hard work. You just did something highly demanding, and you should honor that. But guys, here is the ultimate payoff. It's almost magical. When you finally drop that defended self and just speak from your physical reality, the quality of the room literally shifts. Your partner's nervous system detects that raw authenticity. Their armor drops and their defenses soften. That endless, exhausting, spinning loop of the argument just breaks. True primal connection becomes possible. And not because you gave in or compromised, but because they finally felt the real you. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. When you get emotionally hijacked, because you will, how quickly can you recognize that you're gone, and how quickly can you come home to your body? Remember, you don't have to be perfect at this, not at all. Just start small. The moment you're willing to step out of that heavy armor and speak the simple truth from your body, everything changes. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you all next time. If you want to work on this for real, try Figlet, my AI relationship coaching app. You can start for free, no credit card needed, at figlet.empathy.com.